It is week 18 of weekly reads. So let's go over all the books I'm currently reading so that when I talk about them throughout the week, you'll know kind of where I started. This also helps explain why I finished so many books on the same day and my thought process, if I can even try to explain it. So the audiobook I'm reading currently is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This is the third book in the Legendborn cycle. I thought this was going to be a trilogy. It is not, but this is a fantasy where our female main character has been Bree throughout the series and continues in this book. I'm only 8% in, so I'm still remembering all the things that happened in the first two books because I read them quite a while ago. But Bree has seemed to ally herself with a very interesting character, so we're just going to see how this all plays out in this book. Like I said, I'm only 8% of the way through. The physical book that I'm reading is The Labyrinth's Heart by M.A. Carrick. This is the third book in the Rook and Rose trilogy. If you've seen some other weekly reads, I was reading the second book for a while, and this is definitely not my favorite fantasy series. I enjoyed enough to finish it, but it's not a book that I'm going to binge. I'm just going to read little bits at a time and be perfectly okay with that. I am 11% of the way through. I honestly have 3 audiobooks that are on my currently reading that I started, but due to library loans, I put them on hold. The first audiobook that this happened to was Straight On Till Morning by Liz Braswell. This is part of the Twisted Tales series, and it is a Peter Pan retelling. If Wendy didn't go to Neverland with Peter Pan, but Captain Hook, and I'm 20% into that. The second book that this happened to, and boy howdy has a lot happened in that book. The third and final audiobook that this happened to was To Be Where You Are by Jane Karon. This is the 14th book in the Mitford Year series. I got 20% into this, and basically all of them I was able to renew, and so I just renewed it and focused on the audiobooks that I couldn't renew. That's how I finished Emily's Wild's third book, and we'll finish the Legendborn book before these, even though those were started before the other one. I've said I rent most of my books from the library, and this is how my brain has to handle that when there are lots of books coming in at one time, because that's what always happens. Moving on from that, the ebook that I'm currently reading that I want to finish, evenings fly away, then I don't get very much read, is When I Fall by J. Daniels. This is the third book in the Alabama Summer series. Our male main character is Reed. Reed has girl best friends, and we've seen him in the other 2 books. However, he also likes women and doesn't like commitment. And so you can imagine his reputation, and that is because of a past relationship, which we dig more into as the book goes on. But Beth is new to town. She had a really rough past. Her mom has passed away, and she's coming to live with a newfound aunt and uncle to kind of help her get back on her feet. Like I said, she was in a really bad situation before she came, and so she's a little guarded and just doesn't have the confidence and is dealing with her own things. And so this book is a romance of them dealing with those things. That is the ebook that I'm reading, and I am 69% of the way through. The book I'm reading with my quiet time is Jesus, the One, the Only by Beth Moore. I am 92% of the way through, so I don't want to give a review on this book because I should finish it today, if not tomorrow, and I will give a review then. And then the 2 books that will be on this list forever are the Bible, because I'm doing a plan that I will finish by the end of the year, and the 365 prompt gratitude journal. If you know how many days are in a year, you should be done by the end of this year, but I've definitely missed some days and haven't made them up or anything like that. So that one will be heading on to 2026. But those are the books I have started. I don't even know how many there were. Way too many. One should not have this many books started. So I'm going to work, especially audiobook wise, this week to try and cut this down to a reasonable amount of audiobooks, because having 4 currently reading audiobooks is a bit ridiculous, even though I truly am just listening to one at a time. I will come back when I have a reading update. Today is May 6th, and yesterday on the 5th, I ended up finishing 2 books, which I am so excited. So the first one was Jesus, the One, the Only by Beth Moore. This is a devotional that I would read in the morning with my Bible time, and I read a couple of chapters each day. I believe there were 40 or 50 chapters, and it's a 360 page book, so it was easy to read a couple chapters every day. This book goes through Jesus' life according to the Gospel of Luke, and so there's some parts where she speeds through it and some parts that we get more in depth. There are parts where she says, I believe this happened, versus having actual biblical things to back it up. But obviously the Gospel of Luke and the Bible in general doesn't go through every second of his life and what every person was feeling. So take that for what it is. I did find it really easy to read and really practical. I read it on an ebook, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. The second second book I finished on the opposite end of the spectrum was When I Fall by J. Daniels. This is the third book in the Alabama Summer series. It's an adult, spicy, palate cleansing romance. Our male main character is Reed. He was hurt in a past relationship and now is just a ladies' man, doesn't necessarily want to commit. He does have a really good group of friends, but in comes Beth. Beth is new to town. Her mom passed away and she didn't realize that she had any family. She finds out she has an aunt and uncle, gets out of a really bad situation and is coming to live with them to kind of start over. And Reed takes a liking to her really quick. Beth also takes a liking to him and ends up standing up for him and getting them in a pickle with Reed's ex. So they end up spending time together because there's a very short stint of fake dating in here. I thought that was a fun time. Beth's story gets a little bit deeper at the end. And for me and my life, it got emotional for me. I don't think majority of people it got emotional for, but just based on my past and based on some things that happened in my life, it was emotional. I'd recommend this series if you just want a palate cleansing, spicy romance. I end up giving this book 3.5 stars. Update on The Labyrinth's Heart by M.A. Carrick. I am officially almost 30% done. I got to page 201 today, and I am liking this book better than the second book in the series. Not quite as much as the first book though, but we will see. I am 51% into Waves of Hope by Judith, and I have not talked about it. This is the first book in the Sanderling's Cove Inn series. The second book is one of the 25 books I want to read in 2025 because I won it in a Goodreads giveaway. But in this book, Grandma Edith owns an inn. Her 3 daughters and granddaughters would come every summer, and so her granddaughters have really good memories there. And so one summer she asked the 3 of them to come back. They're all in their late 20s, all different reasons, but Grandma feels like they need to be here, and Grandma also needs help. So she brings her 3 granddaughters, and then there are 3 or 4 other families in this like cove area, all have grandkids around the same age, and so they all bring them here to see if any of them will connect and have a love match. The 3 granddaughters are Charlotte, Olivia, and Brooke, and so they're very different and they are liking different boys, but we're following all 3 of their stories and the different men and things that they are doing in regards to this inn for their grandma. So I'm liking it. It's a really quick read, and I'm thinking that we will follow these 3 characters throughout the series instead of typically where romance books are a couple each book. I feel like we're going to follow these 3 cousins throughout these books. If they're all 3 going to be characters and have romances in all of the books in the series, but I could be wrong. It is May 8th, and I just finished Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. I will give a review in a second after I think about it, because there is a trope in there that I don't love that's making me want to rate it lower, even though I did enjoy the book as a whole. It definitely felt like a book that they were trying to drag out. I think I've got my thoughts together on Oathbound, but I still feel like it's gonna be a little bit all over the place. The trope that I don't love in fantasy books, especially the second book, is memory loss. And this is the 3rd book in this series. However, there are 4 books, and so I feel like it's almost a second book in that way. But there was memory loss. Bree lost her memory, and so she's with the enemy in the beginning of the book and doesn't realize it, is struggling with memory loss. And I feel like that just makes the book stand still, and I don't love it. We did get some more information on what's going on. The Scions, we get their points of view as they're trying to find Bree and kind of get her memory back. But I definitely didn't love this book as much as the other 2 books. I'm hopeful that the 4th book will come back and do the things I loved in the first 2 books. I listened to this on audiobook, and I ended up giving this book 3.75 stars. Anyways, I am actually home again alone. There's lots of changes coming in my life, but one of them is I'm not going to be working at the same school next year, and so I have some vacation time, and my daughter has like a Mother's Day tea later, so I decided just to take this day off. I was gonna have to leave in the middle and then come back type of situation, so just decided to take it off. So here we are. I get a chance to read. I'm reading Waves of Hope. I talked about it this morning, by Judith. I am 51% of the way done. This is a shorter book at like 280 pages, so I don't think it'll take me too long to finish. It says less than 2 hours. I don't have 2 hours this afternoon, so I don't think I'm gonna be finishing it, but I want to finish it by tonight. That would be my goal. My son has a soccer game like across town, so I'm gonna read and drink my coffee, even though it is 12:45. So I'm going to read this book. I'm starting on page 141 and then stop and get ready. I'll probably listen to my audiobook. Since I finished Oathbound, I'm now listening to Finlay Donovan Digs a Grave, I think it is. I love the Finlay Donovan series. If you like Stephanie Plum, I would definitely recommend Finlay Donovan. Finlay Donovan has kids, and I obviously have kids, and so I relate to her a little bit more than Stephanie Plum. The Stephanie Plum series is so fun though too, so definitely recommend both of them. I sped through Finlay Donovan Digs Her Own Grave and finished it on the 9th. I love the Finlay Donovan series, and I absolutely love this book as well. This is a series you need to read in order, especially for this book, because in this book, we're picking off where the last book stopped. Miss Haggerty, who is Finlay's neighbor, had a body in her backyard. She's been cleared, but now can't go to her house, and so has to stay with Finlay. This neighbor is very nosy and gets into everyone's business, and so Finlay, as well as her nanny slash best friend, partner in crime, Vero, are not super happy that she is staying at the house, but her son kind of drops her off and says, here you go. As we go through this book, we are tying up some loose ends from the other books, which I thought was really fun. And then we're seeing Miss Haggerty, Miss Nosy, who needs to get into everyone's business, has some business of her own that was just wild. And I think that this series is just a fun time. Like, it's not a serious mystery book, but it's just so fun. It reminds me if you've watched the TV show Psych, or if you've read the Stephanie Plum series by Janet Ivanovich. I know I said that when I started the book. If you like either of those, this series is for you. I listened to this on audiobook and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. On the 10th, I finished Waves of Hope by Judith Clean. And as I said, I was wrong. This book does follow Grandma and then Charlotte, Olivia, and Brooke. And we do follow their love stories. And you do not know who's gonna find love in this book, but one of the cousins finds love. It is a book about 3 cousins who come to this inn to help their grandma. Their grandma has found love, and her love want to go away. And so the 3 cousins are there to kind of run the inn and kind of get it all squared away, because they all have different talents. There are 5 other families in the cove, and they all have brought their kids, and so they're just trying to make love matches. And so there are a lot of people who have history in this little cove. It was really fun to follow all of the cousins and not know who was going to end up with who, and you truly do not know. And so I feel like that's very unique for a romance book, and I really enjoy it. There are 2 other books in the series, so I assume the other 2 cousins are going to figure out love in the other 2 books, but we will see, because I've already been wrong once about this series. And I ended up giving that book 3 points. I read this book on an ebook, and I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. Today is May 13th, so let's finish off. I know there's been a lot of editing, Annalise jumping in for reviews, and that's just because the weekend was full and fun, but I didn't have a lot of time to film like in the moment of reviews. But regardless, we're gonna go over the books that I'm still in the middle of. The first one is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bowen Young. This is the one I started the most recently. I believe I started it Saturday night, and I'm only about 5% in as of yesterday. But I feel like this book is gonna be one that really hits home for me. And I don't know if I like that with romance books. I like to kind of be taken out and not feel like I connect super well. I feel like this is one of these books that's going to rip my heart out, because I very much relate to Sarah. She is married to her high school sweetheart, Caleb, and just their dynamic and how she's feeling so far, I have felt very similar things. This is the second book in the Out series. The first one was Out on a Limb, and so these are the best friends that were married in that book. And so Sarah and Caleb are struggling, kind of. It's very interesting, but I feel like very realistic. And so they end up going to a therapy week in the woods camp, and that's where I'm at this point, to kind of figure out their relationship and their dynamic a little bit better. It's not necessarily unhealthy, but Sarah's not super happy in it. Marrying young, I definitely understand this dynamic and definitely understand where Sarah and even Caleb is coming from. So I'm curious to see as the book goes on how I feel about it. The second book is Whispers of Hope by Beth Moore. This is the one I read before my Bible study in the mornings. I haven't done a super great job. I'm about 6% in, and it's just about prayer. There are 70 days, and I have been reading more than one day at a time if I have the time, and it has Bible reading, a little devotional, and then a prayer prompt. And so I've just been going through that. I think I'm like day 6. So we're just going to keep trucking along on that. The third book I have written down, I think I'm going to restart, but it was Sheine Linde by Darcie Little Badger. This is the prequel to Alazzo that I read last month. I started this book kind of on a whim, and then other books have caught my attention, and so I haven't gone back to this book. It is a book I want to read this month in May, and I still have a library loan for it, so we're good to go on that, but I didn't really make any progress, and I didn't put a percentage because I'm really thinking I'm going to restart. I think I got like 20 pages in, but we'll see I might just start there and see if I remember the first 20 pages. I don't know. Haven't gotten that far, but that's on my currently like started list, I guess I should say. The next book is Labyrinth's Heart by M.A. Carrick. This is the third book in the Rook and Rose trilogy. This trilogy is definitely one you have to have your mind on and ready to read it. I'm about 30% into the book. The next book is my audiobook, and it is To Be Where You Are. It is the 14th book in the Mitford series by Karon. And this book takes the approach of Come Rain or Come Shine, which was the book previous, where we don't only follow Father Tim, we are following his son Dooley and his wife and child, and how they're adjusting to marriage and him being a vet and all the things, as well as Father Tim and the shenanigans he's getting into. But it's all happening in Mitford, which I enjoy. As of yesterday, I was 45% of the way through. The next two books are books that I have on my currently reading, but library loans, we've talked about this before in audiobooks, they're just sitting there. The first one is The Drums of Autumn, which is the fourth book in the Outlander series by Diane Gabaldon. I am 73% of the way through that book. I can't remember which of the two books I'm going to read next. I think it is the second book, which is Straight On Till Morning by Liz Braswell. This is a twisted tale about Peter Pan if Wendy went to Neverland with Hook instead of Peter. And I'm 21% of the way through that. Those two didn't change this week just because they're still waiting. The next two books are books I talk about every single time, and I will for the remainder of the year, and that is the Gratitude Journal. I don't think I made a ton of progress. I didn't change the percentage because I don't feel like I made a lot of progress. And the second one is the Bible, and I have made progress in that one. However, I am behind, and so today's the day I'm going to catch up on that, and then I will change the percentage just because it does take 3 or 4 days to change it 1%. So I definitely don't update it every time I read. So those are the 9 books I'm in the middle of at the end of week 18.